What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. I'm your host, as always, Ben Brown, co-owner of BSL Nutrition, where we help you change your belief system around what it means to be healthy. And in today's episode, I wanted to start to break down some of our nutritional philosophy or underpinnings, if you will, that help us be so successful with the clients that we're fortunate enough to work with. One of the frustrations that I've experienced and that I continue to experience with podcasts in general, and so much of the information that's out there is that we're really just getting these sound bites of information around nutrition, health, fitness, various dieting methodologies. And it's really difficult, I think, for the lay consumer, for someone who potentially doesn't know too much about nutrition, is just starting to get started or is just wanting to get started on their journey, to really know which way is up, to really know what are the logical steps that they should be taking to facilitate their health change, to start to lose weight, to start to gain muscle. And I'll generally speak mostly to weight loss because that's the majority of the clientele that we work with, is those looking to really change their body composition, improve their energy, and learn long-term lifestyle behavior change in a way that's as aggressive as we want or need it to be. And so, like I said, that there's only so much that we can glean out of watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, and certainly, like I said, the sound bites of information that we get through social media. And so in this nutrition series, I wanted to put together a series of episodes that can really help break down kind of our philosophy and our approach to how we tackle nutrition with our one-on-one coaching clients, and the way that I've found to be successful. So I can only speak to what we do in our practice and the ways in which we help our clients get great results. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to just be fully transparent and just break that down for you and give you the exact process that we leverage to be able to help our clients. At the end of the day, I fully acknowledge that every single one of you listening is not going to become a client. That's totally cool. And therefore, what I would like to do is be able to provide as much value as possible and help give you some of the tools, hopefully, that you can plug in for yourself to make this process easier, to potentially minimize some of the noise in this industry, some of the confusion, and hopefully clear up some of the conflicting information that you might be receiving. And so I wanted to put together a nutrition series, a training series, a movement series, maybe even a mindset series that will allow me to just share some of our beliefs and practices in a realistic way, because after all, this is the Smart Nutrition Made Simple show. So I'm going to keep these episodes fairly brief and just give you the tangible pieces of information that I think are relevant for the topic at hand. With that said, as we progress through this series, if you find value in this, obviously I would appreciate if you would, share this, if you would give us a positive rating and review on iTunes, and ultimately, share it on social media, tag us, and let me know if there's specific topics or questions that you have relative to these given categories. And so, for this nutrition series, we're going to really just kind of take this in a hierarchy of importance type of approach. So I'm going to focus on the kind of the most important things that we do within the coaching process and how we structure that process. Now, when a client first comes to us, it becomes imperative that we get a better understanding of what the client is currently doing. We fully acknowledge that if someone is unhappy with their physique, their weight, their current lifestyle, how they feel, how they look, there's obviously a myriad of changes that need to occur. But this occurs on a spectrum. This is not something that we're going to flip a proverbial switch and you're going to lose the weight overnight. You're going to feel better immediately. You're going to all of a sudden go out and change all of your eating behaviors, even though oftentimes that's what we would like to have happen. It's just not going to happen. You've got years upon years upon years of ingrained eating and emotional behaviors that have contributed to why you are where you are. So the first thing that we need to do is what we call nutritional priming. And this is something that we will revisit a number of times throughout a coaching process and just throughout the coaching journey in general to really establish a baseline. And so this is part of what we call our discovery process. But what we need to do is we need to really just create an assessment of where you're starting from, where someone's starting from. And this entails both objective and subjective data that we want to leverage to make informed decisions. So for you listening, for all intents and purposes, this gives you an opportunity to do a few things with this nutritional priming. It gives you the opportunity to, one is just start to figure out more about how much you're consuming. And so this nutritional priming entails starting to track your calorie intake. And the app that we use as of now to track calories is called Chronometer. And so if you've never tracked your calories before, the reason why we firmly believe in the calorie tracking process is because it gives us the data that we need, like I said, to make informed decisions. I'll give you an example is we just started working with a financial advisor, and within the process, they asked us to create a home expense budget, right? And so we had to go through all of our bank statements over the last couple months and really root down into kind of the averages of how much we were spending every single month, what commitments we have coming up over the next year, over the next couple years, how we're going to budget accordingly, so that the financial advisors can project out and say, okay, based on your spending behaviors, based on your saving behaviors, based on your income, here's what your trajectory looks like, right? And in our particular case, it's like, hey, you better stop spending so much, or you better start making a lot more money so that we can get you to where you want to be with respect to your retirement age, the amount that you have in your bank account, the amount that you have invested, and what have you. And frankly, it's not dissimilar from a calorie tracking standpoint. Is the only way we can truly help you manipulate those variables, make change with respect to your calorie intake, is by understanding what you're currently doing. And so it's all good and well to say that you don't need to track calories, that food quality matters most, that all you need to do is eat 3 square meals, that if you just skip breakfast and eat between 12 and 8, then you will be able to manage your calories. And sure, to some degree, given the situation, those conversational topics make sense. But at the end of the day, the best thing that we can do is help you derive more calorie awareness. And genuinely, that's what the calorie tracking process does for us. It helps do a number of things. One, it helps us establish more effective tracking skills. So being able to effectively track your calorie intake, being able to weigh and measure your foods, being cognizant of your intake, starting to understand how much you're consuming is a skill in and of itself, and it takes time to develop. And we want to arm you with those skills so that you can make those informed decisions. You know, a lot of people will talk about being an intuitive eater. Well, I will tell you, based on our modern day food culture, there is no one that is intuitively eating their way through a bag of potato chips or a donut or an ice cream bar. It's just not happening. Our brain is fixed to thrive off of sugar and fat and salt, and our foods are processed in such a way that we are overriding those chemical signals between our brain and our stomach and our hormones that regulate hunger and fullness with our leptin and our ghrelin. And so you are absolutely kidding yourself if you think that you are going to be able to intuit your way to losing body fat, especially if you've never had the opportunity to truly understand how your calories are adding up. And that is why we are so adamant about the calorie tracking process, and why, generally speaking, it's the first thing that we do with all of our clients is teach them how to track their calories so that we can drive more calorie awareness for them, so that we can drive more understanding for their coach to be able to know what their nutrition behaviors look like, what are their food preferences, what are their food aversions, what does their meal timing look like. And then, of course, within the context of calorie intake, like how many calories are they consuming, how many how much protein, carbs, and fats are they consuming. But for this episode, we're just going to stick with kind of this nutritional priming and calorie awareness, so that over the first few weeks of this discovery approach of this nutritional priming, we're getting a really good idea around what the client is consuming, how much they're consuming, and then similarly, they're getting a really good idea of how much they're consuming. Now, the other reason this is so important is because, as you can imagine, if I have a financial advisor who is paying attention to my expenses and understanding that my expenses are going to be directly tied into my savings and my investments and what have you, well, I'm going to be more cognizant of how much I'm spending on things. And I'm probably going to cut back on some of the things that I know might be frivolous expenses, probably some of the things that might be nice to haves, but not must haves. And it's not dissimilar when it comes to our nutrition intake. If you have a co-pilot, if you have a support system, if you have a coach in your corner who you know is standing next to you and supporting you in this journey, and I'm not going to say looking down on you, I'm not going to say looking over your shoulder, I'm not going to say judging in any capacity, because that's not what we do. We simply stand next to you and offer the support and the guidance and the clarity and the confidence that you need to make the appropriate decisions. And of course, the education to be able to do that. And so when you're getting started with this tracking process, it's not unusual for you to start to make better decisions by virtue of the accountability that is automatically built in to the calorie tracking process, to the fact that you have signed up for a coaching program, you've invested your hard-earned money, and you know you have someone you need to show up to. Well, automatically you're going to start to make better decisions. And this is something in terms of behavioral psychology that we call the Hawthorne effect. And it's really the fact that our behaviors change when we know someone is watching, right? If you're speeding down the street, well, regardless of whether you're speeding or not, if you're driving down the road or you're on the highway and you see a cop parked on the side of the road, again, regardless of whether you're speeding or not, what are you going to do? You're going to slow down, right? It's the fact that your behaviors change based on observation, someone observing you, and or someone watching, or knowing that someone is paying attention to you. Your behaviors are going to change. And that's what we leverage with this nutritional priming approach, so that automatically right out of the gate is not only are you learning the skills and the tools to effectively track your calorie intake, you've got a coach there for accountability and support, but again, your behaviors are going to automatically change because you've got that accountability. And I will say that I believe firmly, it's my belief that this is the number one most powerful aspect of the coaching program, and of our coaching program specifically, because you have a one-on-one coach who you're able to have conversations with, and you know who cares and is showing up for you and who you are showing up for. Now, I'll ask, how many times have you downloaded a program, entered your information into a calorie tracking app, downloaded a meal plan or a recipe guide with the intention of getting started and eating healthier, and you didn't do a damn thing with it? In all likelihood, the reason you didn't do anything with it, because you can get free programs online all day long. There's no lack of information, obviously, but the differentiator is having the accountability show up, which is why it is so important for you to, one, have a coach, and two, actually invest into a coaching program, because if you are not investing your money into it, you are not going to show up, right? When you pay attention. That is a fact. And so with that is we're driving accountability and ultimately helping you improve your nutrition choices to the degree that it's not unreasonable over the first 2 to 4 weeks of our discovery process of this nutritional priming approach that a client is losing weight. They are feeling better. They're driving momentum by virtue of the fact that their body composition is improving, the scale weight's going down, and they're feeling awesome about the process because we haven't told them what to eat, what not to eat, which is usually the first thing. And it's certainly what we would expect going into a nutrition coaching program, or certainly when you download a guide online. What is it going to say? It's going to say, eat these things, don't eat these things. And in terms of, again, human psychology, that's the last thing that we really need, because anytime there's an element of restriction at play, there's going to be some, whether it's psychological or even metabolic pushback on that, to the degree that if you tell me I can't have chocolate chip cookies, well, F you. At some point, I'm gonna eat those chocolate chip cookies, and I'm probably gonna eat a hell of a lot more than I would have if I knew it was well within my control, right? So that's really one of the biggest elements of why our coaching program is successful, is because we don't put those restrictions at play. We give you the tools to make informed decisions and treat you as an owner and an adult that you are, and give you the leverage and the power to be able to determine what is appropriate for you given the context of your goals, your calorie limits, which we'll get into later. And at the end of the day, the other aspect of this, like I said, is really just giving the coach the necessary feedback so that we can ultimately determine what the appropriate starting point is. So after these 2 to 4 weeks of this nutritional priming or discovery process, as we call it, is we really are in a position where we've determined, okay, someone is consuming on average X amount of calories. Here's the change that we're seeing in terms of scale weight, in terms of body composition changes, if there has been a change, and usually there is. And again, that's without us giving you a calorie limit, without us setting your macros, without us telling you what you can and can't eat, really just giving people full freedom to make the decisions that they feel are best for them. Again, so that we can understand what those decisions look like. And then as coaches, as experts in the field, then being armed with the information to be able to pull whichever lever makes the most sense, right? Be able to make informed decisions around, okay, now we can fully understand that you're consistently eating 2,300 calories. We're losing about a half a pound a week. Based on that trajectory, here's what we're projecting out over the next 6 to 12 months. Here's what we can do to be a little more aggressive. And here's how, then from here, jumping out, here's what we can do to help you improve your food choices, your macronutrient intake, your total calorie intake, right? Then talk, and so we'll get into kind of this whole hierarchy of nutritional importance. But for today's episode, really, I just wanted to focus on nutritional priming. This phase of coaching is something that, like I said, we'll consistently come back to if and when someone needs an audit. So it's not unusual for clients to get great results over the first 6 to 12 months. And then at some point say, you know what, I'm good not tracking. I feel like I have developed the skills to be a little more intuitive at this point, which is exactly what we want for you, to be able to then give you the freedom and flexibility that you want and need. And then you always have this in your back pocket to be able to come back to and say, okay, you know what, I'm getting a little loosey-goosey with my nutrition intake. I'm seeing that the scale's starting to bump up a little bit. I'm not feeling so great about how my pants are fitting. I think I'll jump into a nutritional priming phase. I'll just objectively track my intake for the next couple of weeks. That should give me the opportunity to audit myself and reestablish this level of awareness so that I can then say, okay, yeah, I realized I was getting a little too liberal with my dessert intake, with my alcohol intake, with my portion sizes, and now I have the information that I need to kind of tighten the reins a little bit. And that's ultimately what it's all about. It's not that you have to track your calories in perpetuity. It's not, again, that it's the end all be all. But when we factor in all of the different ways for you to create a calorie deficit, right? Because that's all that diets do, right? If you're going to intermittent fast, if you were going to do if you're going to eliminate gluten and dairy, or you're going to go paleo, or you're going to do Whole30, or you're going to just do like HCG, or you're going to do any of these newfangled fad-based diet, overly restrictive, aggressive dieting plans, like good on you, go for it. But please understand that the only reason these are successful, and they're not really successful long-term, by the way, because the only reason they're successful is because they leverage usually an unrealistic amount of restriction. And that's not what we want, because we know that when we don't restrict and we give you full autonomy and freedom to make your own decisions, that you're going to be a lot more likely to be consistent long term, so that we can help you ultimately change your behaviors and change your identity. And again, this is part of changing the belief system around what it means to be healthy. It doesn't mean I have to restrict. It means I need to take ownership over these decisions and develop the tools and the skills to be able to make the best decisions possible, because that's who I am. That's the type of person I'm trying to become. And that's the type of person who is successful long term. And that's what we want for you. And so I hope this brief episode was helpful, just to give you a little bit of context around how we start our coaching program, why it's important for us to help teach our clients how to effectively track their calorie intake, how to budget accordingly, right, so to speak, and why the initial tracking process is so important in the grand scheme of things. In the next episode, we're going to dive into calorie intake, how and when we start to assign a calorie intake, and what that can typically look like and why it's successful. And we'll follow up in subsequent episodes on protein intake, on macronutrient intake, on food quality, we'll talk about fad diets a little bit more. We'll talk about hydration. And so I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully this has been helpful for you, and I will catch you in the next conversation.